Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 42 Rugby Weekly on Six Nations Eve, I think. But the excitement is absolutely palpable. I'm looking at Murray Kinsella and Bernard Jackman here. They're ready to go. Hello to everybody on YouTube if you're joining us there, and to everybody at home if you're listening through conventional means as a podcast. Start with yourself, Murray. How excited are you when you see that Ireland team named? Anything jump out at you as a surprise, given you do hear whispers of these things during the week?
Yeah, well, when I first heard that Mack Hansen might be starting, it was a surprise to me. I suppose I'm still kind of stuck in a bit of a mindset of what it was like before, in that the next person in line comes in, and you'd seen Robert Balakoon have a start in November in the Argentina game, and I probably had been feeling and even predicted that he might be the one to come in on the wing and Andrew Conway might switch over. But you see the selection and you think that actually makes more sense. He's probably more of a like for like replacement for James Lowe, and the role he was playing in terms of the amount of touches, the number of touches he was getting on the ball off his wing, the, I suppose, versatility in how Hanson can play, and just, I suppose, it's almost represents a little bit of a punt by Farrell. He's more inclined to do that kind of thing. You know, he spoke about it in November, how he doesn't want his wingers to be too tidy. That was how he described Lowe, and I thought it was a really fascinating insight. And Hanson gives you something different, something really exciting. Obviously, seeing James Hume on the bench as well is exciting there. Ryan Baird, those younger guys coming in and impacting in a 23. So absolutely, yeah, there's loads of excitement there. Even in the more expected selections, like the pack, again, it just excites me what they can do together as a unit with their skills and with their power and their size. So definitely excited.
You didn't come up with a nickname yet for the front three, did you?
I put it on Twitter. I haven't checked back to see what people have suggested, so maybe we'll announce that officially before the weekend.
That sounds good. Bert, I want to ask you about Mack Hansen to begin with. Probably the most interesting name that jumps out of the starting 15 at least, and a player that I don't mean to keep harping on about it, but when he signed for Connacht, the two of you were a little bit uncertain as to whether or not he would be the kind of signing that they needed, or, excuse me, that he would bring the type of quality that I quite correctly predicted he would. But no, I know. In all seriousness, talk to us about his development even over the last, say, 6 months and what you've seen from him this season, because this is a pretty meteoric rise when you think about it. For a guy to be relatively unheralded by everybody to come over and now to be starting on Ireland's left wing.
Yeah, it's a huge rise, and in fairness, I've got to know him a little bit. He's a really engaging character. He kind of is the same off the field as the way he plays on it, and he's definitely not tidy, if that's what Faz is looking for. But he has a lot of impacts. He's been really good. It's going to be so interesting to see if he can step up to the next level. And how Ireland use him. I mean, you know, James Lowe was used for his left foot. He was at full back a lot. I don't think Hanson really will be that far in field, but he'll certainly come and look to pick up little scraps off Gibson Park around the breakdown, I'd say, as far as the 20 metres in. And he's deceptively strong. He breaks a lot of tackles. I'm not sure. He's certainly not Balakoon speed, but he breaks more than his fair share of tackles, gets his hands free a lot. And yeah, it's a good call. It does make more sense to go with a guy who's playing left wing all the time than move someone across. But I was a little bit shocked by it. I thought Balakoon and Conway would be the wings. But I'm excited to see how Hanson steps up to international rugby, and it's a great story for anyone who's not really feeling it, or their career isn't going as well as they would have liked. His ability to come over here and do what he's done is incredible.
You're right to flag, Gav, because I'll definitely put my hand up. I did not see this kind of impact coming at all from him. I definitely wouldn't be a good rugby scout, it transpires. But fair play to Andy Friend and Connacht. They got that connection. And I think even Andy Friend said himself this week, he probably didn't quite see this impact coming. That try against the Bulls where he took off upfield, that made him sit up and go, wow, something special has happened here. And when a player is on that kind of trajectory, you kind of just let them run and run with it. And that's what Farrell's doing here. It's an incredible story. Like, I interviewed him towards the start of the season, and he was talking about how he's working as an apprentice electrician only a few years ago in Canberra. Like, he played Australia under 20s, but he wasn't 100% dead set on being a superstar rugby player in his mind. The academy system, he explained, was a bit different over there. So you had to have something else going on. But he said he was the worst electrician in Canberra, and so he decided to go all in on rugby, packed it in, took a bit of a punt, I suppose, and even financially a bit of a risk, but it's worked out well for him. He rose up with the Brumbies, and then he was drinking in a local bar in Canberra called The Ruck, I think it's called, and Andy Friend's son works there. His son Jackson, they became mates, and the owner of the bar, I think, knows Andy Friend as well, and that's where the connection came. And Diane O'Shea, his mother, is from Castlemartyr in County Cork and moved over to Oz when she was 7. So there's all these amazing strands to it, and as Bert says, like, his personality is infectious. He's probably like Lowe in that sense as well. Even the post-match interviews, you see he's very relaxed and doesn't take it too seriously, but he's a serious rugby player. And he has that bit of versatility as well. I think his preferred position, actually, he said was fullback. That's where he wants to play. And he's played a bit of rugby at 10 as well. So clearly, if you're going to have a guy roaming around the pitch, then that's pretty helpful as well. So yeah, an incredible story, and it'll be just fascinating to see, won't it? Like, because there's still a bit of, always with a player stepping up, you just don't know exactly how it's going to go, who he's going to face in a 1-on-1 out wide, or how many touches he's going to get in the ball. So really exciting to find out.
The three of us are doing a Six Nations preview live on Zoom later on with Squidge, and actually just as we started recording, Murray, we got a question from one of the 42 members who'll be on that call with us, Michael Halpenny, and he was asking if there was any chance we could do a little bit of analysis on Hanson. I presume he means kind of video analysis. Might be a bit late in the day for that, because I know you guys are fairly well prepared, but if I could just ask you, Bernard, to even zoom in a little bit on what he will actually bring, I suppose, not only as an individual player, which, like, because we know, as you say, he can break tackles, he has a bit of pace, he's a good finisher. But what I love about watching him is his actual link-up play, and we probably don't see it a great deal, probably more so from the modern winger, but that's probably, to my mind, where he's a very good replacement for Lowe, is actually keeping attacks alive with an offload and the timing of his passes, just little things like that could see him actually contribute and actually bring other guys into play, make them look good as well as himself.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think, as you and Murray have alluded to, he is the most like for like with James Lowe, without being obviously that big man out of a left foot, but he does bring other people into the game, and I think Ireland's game is becoming more focused on that, and not dying with the ball. Even though we've got a very high ruck number of rucks in games, we are trying to keep the ball alive, trying to get our nose through contact, and support runners are running positive lines. So he's definitely somebody who can do that. And I think he'd be a crazy 10. I'd love to see him play 10. I didn't actually know until recently that he had played a lot of rugby at 10. But yeah, look, it's a big occasion for him. I just hope he goes out and does himself justice and does what he does week in, week out. But yeah, it's that ability to stay on his feet, I think, which is what probably got him the nod. He's
beaten more defenders than anyone in the URC as well, and run for more meters. Like, he's an attacking threat in his own right when he's 1-on-1. Or even 2-on-2 or whatever it might be. So they'll be looking to get him touches on the ball. And sometimes you think he's going to get tackled here, but he just has an uncanny ability to kind of wriggle his way out or shift his body weight slightly, and the tackler just slips off him. And that's a really intuitive skill. I'd say he finds it hard to describe sometimes how he's done what he's done. Even after that Bulls try, I think he said it was just a blur. I'm not sure what happened just now. And again, that's refreshing and exciting.
Murray, James Hume talked the talk a couple of months ago, and now he's walking the walk. I'm delighted for him as well. I think most Irish rugby fans would be. When you actually hear a guy being as out in the open about his international aspirations and the fact that he wanted to be involved now and he didn't see himself just as being a prospect, and that he's delivered on that as well, and he's in the squad. Yeah,
talk about form and upward trajectory. He's exactly an illustration of that. Just to note, Andy Farrell's due to speak at 4 p.m. We're recording here, 2:15. Just after hearing that Robbie Henshaw and Keith Earls had injury issues this week, so we'll find out more about that for sure at 4 p.m. But that's not to take away from the excitement about this selection. And you just love to see him get a good stint off the bench, wouldn't you? 20 minutes or whatever it might be, to get a few touches, because he is someone who just wants and demands the ball. He's got incredible footwork. His offloading ability is really sharp. Defensively, he's just continued to grow as a force as well, making really proactive reads, and has obviously benefited from working at Jared Payne, the defensive coach in Ulster, guiding him and probably just backing him, and his confidence has always been there, but it's definitely grown this season. So yeah, brilliant to see another, I suppose, contender in the mix, and another option for Ireland. Like, he was definitely vying and pushing even to play. As he said in November, he wasn't too happy not to get involved, and he's gone away and done his talking on the pitch. So I really hope we see a good cameo from him on Saturday.
How do you anticipate he might make that step up the test level, Birch? Does he have the minerals?
Yeah, I think he has. He's got loads of speed, good skill set, good footwork. Yeah, he looks like he's ready made for it, and I'd imagine he'll get a start against Italy, I'd like to think. But it's just great to see, young players, new players coming on the scene, and pushing their way into the Irish team, which is very strong, and it would have been easy probably not to go a little bit more conservatively. But I admire Farrell for showing bravery in a selection.
Anything else jump out at you about that Ireland team, Birch? It is pretty much as expected otherwise. I'd imagine we spoke last week about the little battle between Carbery and Carty for that backup 10 spot. Carbery gets it. I know we said last week it would have been great to see Carty rewarded for his brilliant provincial form, but difficult not to be pleased as well for Carbery, who's had a tough time of it and is back sooner than we expected. Would you have any fears of giving him 20 minutes, or do you think Johnny Sexton is going to have to put in sort of 70 or so, and you just ease Carbery back into it?
No, I'd say to be looking to the game is going in a positive way, to bring Joey on, and make sure that he's gets through that, get some game time in his legs for obviously next week. It depends if we're in a comfortable position, which isn't a given by any manner of means. That but I think that would be the plan, would be to get 20 minutes into him and obviously give Johnny a little bit of a break, but just make sure Joey's right where they need him to be.
They've generally had a 23 who's kind of maybe a recognised wing and also covers 13. In Earls probably most recently. Hume and Ringrose probably have a bit of experience there, but not wings by any means. So you're always planning for worst case scenario. That is a potential one of them, but there's just so much to be excited about with it. As I said, Baird again getting another chance. Henderson, we presuming, didn't quite get the clearance with his ankle and he hasn't played for a long time, but we saw Baird in that Argentina match, the big line break he made, has been working really hard in the other areas of his game to improve those. And then I suppose Gibson Park continue at 9. It's what we expected, certainly, but he gets backed again for a Six Nations, and that's another big, I suppose, achievement and milestone for him at 9. And another indicator that this is the style of 9 that they really want to push forward with. So fascinating to see how the, I suppose, game plan and approach from Ireland evolves or otherwise, because everyone's had a couple of months to scout them really intently, to really get a grip on what they're doing in phase attack. And even in the Argentina game, I thought you saw elements of that where it wasn't quite as fluid because defensively Argentina got a bit more pressure on them. So it'll be fascinating to see how Ireland have looked to kind of layer up on what they did in November.
That was actually going to be my next question for Birch. We've probably seen a past iteration of this Ireland team stagnate, probably because teams did figure out ways and means of stopping them, and just that they didn't seem to evolve to the extent that you need to at this level. So how do you actually progress even things like phase play in a training camp, Birch? Like, does it have to become more sophisticated, or is it more so you just need to change the picture, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's going to be around decision making, to be honest. The way they're set up to play, there should more often than not be a soft shoulder somewhere, and that doesn't mean that you have to always pass. Sometimes that can be the carry, but I don't think that the shapes will change a huge amount. It's just getting better at making reads later and dealing with, as Murray said, that really aggressive D. Let's be honest, New Zealand aren't they're not a very aggressive defensive team. They're traditionally an up and out. They have got a little bit more aggressive, but Argentina certainly brought some heat there with some shooters, and they sent us back inside a lot, whereas a big part of this has been able to get into the 15-metre channel and then have a reload outside that. So off that. So if you do get caught playing within the 15s, it can be a little bit claustrophobic, and certainly Wales and getting Jenkins, who obviously came in last year to replace Byron Haywood as defence coach. He's gone back to the Sean Edwards type system. So they certainly want Ireland to get easy ball to the edges, which means we have to play a little bit narrower, but at the start to punch holes, play truer forwards instead of playing at the back. But that's all what Farrell and Cat will want is to get exposed to different types of defences and continuously improve our decision making and our execution, so that we're more of an all round team. I mean, it was great in November, but 3 games, when New Zealand were tired, Argentina were tired, and Japan weren't probably match ready. It's a very small pool of games to say that we're 100% there. I think this Six Nations, with 8 games in total, I think that'll be a much better test of how far we've come.
Murray, to what extent are you frightened by the number of people writing Wales off? I can't remember Six Nations in which more people have been so sure that Wales are going to be bad. Even the Welsh media are sort of saying this could be, I guess, the end of something in one sense, but the start of probably anarchy in another. And I've seen even Irish rugby pundits, columnists, I think, come out saying, like, this should be a comfortable win for Ireland. And I'm not even superstitious, but I am like, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? What are you doing? Have you learned nothing from history?
Worrying that it's being cursed. Well, I've been on the Wales media today and Tuesday, and they're absolutely loving it. You can see the little glint in their eye when it's brought up every time, as it has been with every single player and coach, about how they're underdogs for it. Like, it's easy fodder for Pivac and his coaching staff to be prodding and prompting their players with. And in fairness, Stephen Jones kind of underlined there on Tuesday that they still do have world-class players. Like, you look at Lewis Rees-Zammit, freakish talent. His try, obviously, last weekend for Gloucester was just remarkable and a real reminder of what he can do. But they are, listen, like, objectively speaking, they are missing a lot of highly experienced, important players who would have been starting this game, indeed, who started their Six Nations winning campaign last year. And that's where I suppose the pessimism has come from. I probably wouldn't have as strong a confidence in Ireland as others have. I definitely think they will win the game, and they should win the game, but there's still quality in that Welsh team, even without the experienced, grizzled figures there. There's a different kind of excitement. Like, I look at their back row of Ellis, Jenkins, Tane Basham and Aaron Wainwright. Birch, you'll be able to fill us in on their specific skill sets, but they're obviously different from the Tipperick, Fekitoa, Lidiots, Navidis that we all know so well from years of top class performances, but they're excellent rugby players as well. And as we know, the Wales jersey just has they turn into Supermen, don't they, when they pull it on, and they turn into different players and all the regional stuff. Like, we don't even really need to go over it again. It's insignificant really when it comes to this weekend. So absolutely, there are warranted reasons for the confidence in Ireland, and that's also about how Ireland played in November and what they did and how they're attacking it, and also their relative clean bill of health. But yeah, Wales still have some quality there, and Six Nations rugby, you can never be too confident, I don't think.
Talk to us about that Welsh back row, Birch.
Yeah, it's very well balanced. Wainwright burst on the scene as a 6. He's also able to play 7, but Pivac definitely felt that behind Toby Fekitoa there was a bit of a gap, so he's converted him now to being an 8. He's very athletic. He was a very good soccer player with Cardiff City until he was about 16. Big engine, powerful. And very direct, to be honest. He's direct, whereas Basham is class. He's got a great footwork, great speed, good power. And then Jenkins is a leader, good on the ground, a grafter, and can make big plays. So they're strong there. It's probably the front fives, I think, that Ireland will be hoping to get a advantage over. Adam Beard is obviously vice captain and was on the British and Irish Lions tour and a very experienced and good player. But I'm not sure Will Rowlands. I know he was ex-Wasps, went to Dragons. I don't think him, Ryan Elias, Wyn Jones, and Tom Francis. I think front five is the area where we should hopefully have some dominance.
Murray, what do you make of Josh Adams in midfield? Can he play centre, and is it an area that Ireland could potentially exploit, given his relative lack of experience there.
Yeah, they'll be considering it that way, I'm sure. He's obviously an outstanding wing and has played a bit there for Cardiff, and even I think once in the November series as well. So has a little bit of recent experience in the position, but it's very different when you're trying to deal with an attack like Ireland's, who can now play with width, and you've got to make a lot of tackles in that channel. You've got to be really nailed on your communication. You're in a slightly different slot. Listen, he's an excellent rugby player, and obviously Wales have had success with moving George North into that position before, and that's something that Pivac is hoping will be I suppose, an example for Adams. But with himself and Tompkins in the centre, it doesn't look like a huge strength for Wales, and obviously that's an area of real strength for Ireland. As we said, Henshaw possibly carrying a knock, but Aki and Ringrose both playing really good rugby, and they'll be absolutely determined to make that a big kind of advantage tactically on the pitch. So yeah, it is a slightly reshuffled backline. There's still a lot of threat in it as well. McNichol obviously is a really exciting attacking player. I think defensively he's had a few slips here and there at test level certainly, but there's a lot of danger in the backline. Even Thomas Williams at 9 has been playing really good rugby, and I actually think Squidge is going to maybe chat a bit about that later on in our members show. So yeah, there's attacking threats to be concerned about, but I do think Ireland will look at that as a relative weakness, I suppose. They were looking to get Willis Halaholo back, the Welsh, but he obviously hasn't made it back in time. John Davies is there and was looking for cap 100, actually test cap 100, but he misses out in selection as they back Adams there at 13.
So what kind of a game from Andy Farrell, from Mike Catt and co, Birch, will allow Ireland to win this game even comfortably, or just get the job done? And what kind of a game should they try to avoid that would potentially allow Wales into it? Even this sounds a little bit too presumptuous, but I'm just going to ask it anyway.
Yeah, look, I think we've got to continue to play high tempo, and look, he's picked a team to do that. So Gibson Park is in there. Gibson Park is a decent kicker, but his strength is getting the ball away from the breakdown, drawing in defenders, putting people into little holes, getting on the front foot. And we have so many ball carriers now. Like, it'd be a shame to have them playing a kick chase or an aerial contest type game. I think we need to play to their strengths. Got footballers, guys who can win collisions, and I think that's what we need to do and lay down a mark. I'm not sure how confident they certainly believe that the Welsh jersey they can beat anybody, but it's a tough away game first up. If we play to the form we're in, problems are going in in good form. Confidence should be high, so go and play with confidence and test out their ability to stop you. I think that's. I'd be shocked if we try to play kind of percentage rugby. I'd like to see us, being ambitious.
As I say, we are going to discuss some of the other countries involved in this competition on that call with Squidge later on. It's members.the42.ie, by the way, if you want to join us, and you will be invited straight to that show. We're kicking off at 8 o'clock. But Murray, just to broaden it out slightly, maybe not even talk specifically about teams, but are there any players this season that you're actually really looking forward to seeing from, say, England, Scotland, Italy, France? Not necessarily new players, but just players that you think might have an impact on the tournament.
Yeah, with England, probably Freddie Stewart at fullback is one. Marcus Smith at 10. Obviously, they get their first kind of Six Nations campaign, and it's fascinating that Owen Farrell's not there to be the guiding dominant influence. And it looks like a new England team almost, doesn't it? Obviously, there's some experience there. Courtney Laws is missing as well, so Tom Curry takes over the captaincy, and it's kind of hard to gauge exactly how they're going to go. It might end up being a good thing for them that they have to kind of shift it on and have this kind of new wave of players. Listen, Smith's been absolutely riveting to watch for Quins every single weekend. I thought he was good in the November Test series as well, but it is a different kind of beast, isn't it? Six Nations rugby, and even that is applicable to Ireland as well. Like Birch has mentioned, their defences are going to be really aggressive. Oftentimes there's weather conditions to factor into it as well. And set piece battles and all that kind of kicking contest stuff is really important. And that'll be massively applicable to Ireland Wales this weekend, actually. I think the the tight five might be another area where Ireland really go after them and could be a point of difference with their strength in the front row now, though. So yeah, those two guys for England, probably keeping an eye on. Scotland are another fascinating one, and like it's just really hard to know where the confidence has come from in the past at times, but they have been building a nice squad under Townsend. And I actually went back through their November stuff last night just to have another reminder of it. And they played some really nice rugby and probably have a bit more balance to their team now as well. So that for me actually is probably the most fascinating matchup of the first weekend. I really can't wait for that game in Murrayfield because I just don't know about this England team and what they're going to offer. It could be absolutely outstanding, or they could really miss the bits of experience that have been kind of shorn of them.
First time I've ever been a little bit wary of Scotland coming into a Six Nations, Bert, purely by dint of the fact that when Stuart Hogg was asked, can they win the tournament, he said, we're not looking beyond England. Usually the answer to that question is unequivocally yes. What do you make of the Scots? Like, can they actually be contenders this year after, I'm not going to say years of promise, because as Murray alludes to, it was kind of promise that they invented themselves, but we've certainly seen progression in their game over the last couple of years. Can it come good this season?
Oh, absolutely. I think it can. I think that on paper they've the strongest team I've seen. They have confidence, but built on decent performances. The two pro sides are better than they were last year. They've done well with the project player. Being able to get guys in who maybe didn't come through the Scottish underage system. And I think AB Zonda, who was the skills coach in Toulouse, he's now the attack coach. I think he's given him a little bit more in attack, and he's certainly, I'm friends with him. He's certainly enjoying it. He feels they're in a really good place. So yeah, I know sometimes they talk themselves up a little bit, but I think they genuinely have reason to be hopeful this competition.
What about the French, Birch? Who do you have your eye on from that squad? Because much as is the case with England, they've had to reshuffle pretty significantly from what they would have been planning, I'd imagine. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing their team. I haven't seen it yet. They obviously play Sunday. They've such depth, and there's a lot of players putting their hand up now for World Cup starts that maybe aren't really on the radar. The French Federation and the LNR, the league, have done a great job of turning around what was a really dysfunctional system in terms of a bias towards non-French qualified, and they've got that right now, and it's all the way down to Pro D2, Feder 1. There's young French players playing week in, week out, and there's a lot of talent, and the goal of a home World Cup was absolutely massive. That basically got people in a room engaging and talking in a way that people didn't believe could happen, because it was very much selfish. The French team looked after the French team, the clubs looked after the clubs. So I'm looking forward to see how Galtier mixes it up, and he's got so much talent. But the problem is getting to the gel, getting them to build on obviously what they did in November, and deal with a bit of expectation now, so he's got experienced coaching staff, obviously. Sean Edwards is in there, but Galtier is a really good technician. Ibanez looks after kind of the man management, and just in a good place. So yeah, I'm over there Sunday, so I can't wait to see at the end of the tournament who are the 10 guys that you'd say France are going to build a team around, because I don't think that's locked in yet. But yet the players who are in the extended squad have seen opportunities now, whether it was down to Australia last year with so many frontliners rested, and they look to be in a really healthy place.
They're home to Italy at the Stade de France on Sunday. Murray, just a word on Italy. Is it going to be another season for them where we can actually make an argument for they're making progress, and yet they just are too far away to get a result?
Yeah, probably, being realistic about it. But they have really slowly but really surely, I think, turned around that squad and I suppose modernised it with an influx of young players who are quality players with like really high level potential. I think even someone like Lamaro captaining them now, like he's getting better and better in the back row. Obviously, Garbisi's over in Montpellier, and he's not been perfect when he's played, but he's learning really important lessons at a higher level there because, as we've mentioned before, top 14, when you're playing week in, week out, it's like European competition every single week. And that kind of exposure is really valuable. So it looks like Kieran Crowley is going to drive on with that more youthful group, and that's a real positive, I think. You'd just love to see them get close. Like Kieran Crowley at the Six Nations launch was answering questions about relegation and promotion again, and he said he'd welcome it just to almost shut people up a little bit. And it was interesting to hear him talk about that. But you would love to see them get a bit closer and be a bit more competitive. It's such a tough opening game though, and as Bert said, it's fascinating to see who France select. Like, you kind of presumed you had their 15 in mind, then you look at some of the players they've released even from their camp ahead of this weekend, and there's some really high quality international players in there. I'm hoping that Melvin Jaminet gets to go in this Six Nations at fullback. He's been class, hasn't he, since coming in last summer against the Aussies, and a guy who was playing in Pro D2, wasn't he, at that stage, Birch? And he's just taken off. I think he signed for Toulouse, and there's a guy who could who has really, I suppose, come from nowhere in most people's eyes to be a star.
As I say, we'll get into some of those other countries in a little bit more detail later on Zoom, but for our listeners and viewers on YouTube, call a winner for us for the tournament, Murray, starting with yourself.
Les Bleus.
Interesting. Birch?
The Mem. Same.
Really, like, even with...
Yeah.
I think...
Sorry, go on, Birch.
Ireland have a great chance, but I just think France have the best depth. And obviously I think they're home to Ireland and England, so and I think they've got momentum. I think they've got confidence, which they haven't had for a long time. They've got real confidence. Obviously Toulouse being double champions as well, that'll feed into that. They believe in the staff. They're chasing, as I said, silverware now and momentum, so I think they're in a good place. And
you're right, Ireland do have a good chance, and they should be putting a bit of pressure on themselves to go and do this now off of back of a really good November. Kind of almost has, I know Ireland didn't win in 2013, but when they nearly beat the All Blacks in 2013, you felt a kind of bit of a bounce in the group, and it rolled into the 2014 Six Nations, and they did a really good job in that. A Grand Slam, I think this year more than any, is going to be really tough. So you can maybe absorb one of those away defeats if that comes, maybe even against France in round 2, and you can rebound from that and go again. So yeah, they should actually be putting a bit of pressure on the group, and I've no doubt that they are completely targeting that. Like, they won't answer questions about it really, but a few of the younger guys have mentioned, not being afraid to go after it. So they're right in the hunt, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it ends up. They have Scotland at home on the last weekend, and how unbelievable would that be after all we've been through with empty stadiums to have a full house against the Scots going for a championship on the last day. It'll be absolute magic.
Yeah, I don't remember looking forward to it, Six Nations, quite as much as this one. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. We will chat about it again later on Zoom. It's members.the42.ie if you want to join us there. Murray, transfer news. And Malakai Fekitoa's signing for Munster is, I mean, let's be honest, it's a replacement for Damien D'Irlanda. He's almost certainly leaving. I kind of looked at the reaction to it, and I think it's a good signing. I love watching him play. I understand, in fairness, that people would have concerns around, I suppose, his injury profile and things like that. But, decent age. I don't know. I just saw a load of people going, absolutely brilliant signing, and others kind of going, yeah, no, there could be issues there in terms of just, I don't know, playing for Tonga, injuries, the like. Which side do you come down on, or are you somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I cannot wait to see him play. It'll be brilliant for Munster fans to have such an exciting attacking player. He's definitely a different profile to D'Irlanda, who's obviously an outstanding inside centre. Fekitoa's at 13. Incredible kind of individual attacking skills, his offloading game, his ability to pick good lines, acceleration where you think he has a defender in front of him, he just kind of swerves to the outside of him. He can distribute as well, and when he hits really, really hard. If he gets a good read on, he can really engine, leave your ribs in pain, I'd say, for several weeks. So all those things are exciting, and it probably means a shift for Chris Farrell, you would imagine, maybe into 12 at times next season, although Rory Scannell's been playing really well there the last while and will be pushing hard for that spot. I suppose the only reservation you have alongside all that is like, is it exactly what Munster really need? Like we've spoken how many times on this pod about hooker tight head. It would be great to see them get a really heavyweight, heavy power addition in one of those positions. And there's been a bit of chat that they are looking for that. There's also chat that they're having to cut their budget ahead of next season. I think you mentioned that before, Birch. So how much scope there is to go out and sign someone else, I don't know at this stage. You just hope that, you know, he's harnessed in the best way possible and he gets a consistent flow of front foot ball to play off. As Birch mentions, those ball carriers are everything. If you get that flow into your attack, then the likes of Fekatoa can absolutely rip things up. But you look at the brilliance of the individuals in Munster's backline for the last number of years, and maybe they haven't got the utmost out of them. So that's the only reservation there. He's played quite a good few games over the last number of years in Toulon and Wasps. He's had injury issues here and there, maybe a couple of poor performances dotted amongst some big impact ones, but I think the Tonga thing is brilliant. I think it's great that he's going to be part of their squad. Obviously it was a divisive issue, but Tonga are one of the ones who are going to benefit from it, and as we said, being in Ireland's World Cup, so he could be playing against some of his Munster teammates if they can confirm that qualification as well. So definitely two sides to it, but I personally really excited to see him playing in a red jersey. I think he's going to add a lot of enjoyment for fans, and that kind of signing, it is important because you want those kind of stardust X-Factor players in your squad.
Bernard, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Everything Murray said, I think he is a good signing. And I think in fairness, once again, the Munster money men have gone out and spent and haven't tried to go cheap. So and Munster deserve to have, you know, top end non-Irish qualified players come in to add to the local talent. So yeah, I think it's a good sign.
Very sort of lost, I suppose, in the shadow of the Six Nations is Ulster and Connacht, and obviously both teams I think have. Do both teams have internationals coming back? I'm pretty sure they do. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You'll be able to inform us.
Brender gets back from camp for yes. Connacht, yeah.
And Ballacloon's going up, isn't he?
Yeah, Ballacloon's back as well. All of a sudden, again, it feels like a crucial game for Connacht, doesn't it? Obviously, it's important. Like every game is important, but they're kind of talking this up as a must-win. And I don't know, it's a bit of a strange one, I guess, in the sense that you're going to be missing, say, guys like Aki, and yet it could be a season-defining game as such.
Yeah, definitely, Gav. And absolutely required that they bounce back from last weekend. Like, obviously, Six Nations is dominating now, but just briefly to run over, it was one of their worst performances under Andy Friend against Glasgow. He said as much afterwards. He was more disappointed, I think, than any time in his tenure so far. They probably feel like they rolled over at home and Glasgow just got on top of them and as we saw, finished strongly. So he absolutely needs a response from his players, and I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked if they don't get it. They'll be stinging all week from that. Tom Daly back in midfield, I think, is a boost. He's been brilliant for them when he's played. Prendergast, as we said, coming back from his experience in Ireland camp will only boost his already kind of flowing confidence. Dennis Buckley starting again. That's great to see. So there's all sorts of reasons for him to be able to bounce back here. The only issue is that Ulster, obviously at home on a Friday night, they tend to play well in these games. Ballacloon is a boost. Lowry's a boost at fullback. Timney comes back onto the bench after being in Ireland camp as well. So they've got lots of quality there. And we'll be absolutely cognizant of the fact that this is a really important fixture, even if it is a little bit away from the limelight. I have to say, I can't wait for the Friday night. It'll be hard picking between the two with the 20s playing as well. It's a nice assortment of appetizers before the big main course at the weekend with Six Nations. So class to have this kind of rugby on a Friday night. It'll be a really hotly contested Interpro, and it's pivotal for both of them really. But I would just say for Connacht, absolutely have to get a response to last weekend's disappointment.
I was actually really looking forward to Ulster and Connacht, and you've just reminded me that I'm going to Musgrave Park for the 20s game, so I'll have to split screen it. Birch, talk to us about the game from Ulster's perspective. Like, the impressive start to the season, we know all of this, and like the good win again, I suppose, last weekend. But from, say, Dan McFarlane's point of view and all of the coaching staff, you know, like that Connacht are going to bring this backlash. I mean, it's almost 100% guaranteed. Does that change, say, the mental preparation of your team at all? Like, how do you kind of account for the fact that not only is this Connacht, but actually it's an angry and dangerous Connacht, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, look, I think from an Ulster point of view, they'll remember and talk a lot about what happened in the Viva for the return fixture, the fact that Connacht won in Ravenhill last year. There'll be a bit of a freshness to the team, the Ulster team for the weekend, and it's an Irish derby. So, like, even though Ulster are going well, I certainly don't think that they'll go into this game under any illusions it's going to be hard. I think there's. Look, obviously Connacht are saying it's a must-win game. I actually don't think they need to win it, but they need to have a lot more resistance than they had last weekend. And I think I was really shocked. And look, that's probably something that's going to have to come with maturity of being able to come out of Europe, where obviously it's a lot of pressure, a lot of hype. And then to back it up the week after, and they've had two very disappointing performances at home, the Dragons at home, and then obviously at the weekend against Glasgow, and that'll drive Andy Friend and the coaches mad, because the biggest thing they want to be is consistent. So, and I also think They really rely on Bundy and Jack Carty to keep them together. So they need other leaders to step up this week and make sure they go to Ravenhill and put in a really good performance.
Call it for us, Murray.
Ulster at home, they'll win.
Birch?
Yeah, same. Unfortunately, yeah, same. I think that's it's a safe call to make, but I think you couldn't back Connacht on form.
I'm going to play it safe all the time now after writing off Mack Hansen, Gav.
Especially when I bring receipts on every podcast, yeah.
I deserve that one.
No, I mean, things change. Bernard, what did you make of Leinster last weekend? Like, again, I think just because the Six Nations is looming, defeats like that can, as much as they absolutely piss off everybody at Leinster, they can almost slip the radar in a more mainstream sense. You know what I mean? Were there any concerns there, or was it just one of those games that you just kind of have to put behind you and crack on?
Yeah, look, it is a concern because Leinster have been very good at going away from home, no matter who plays, and getting results. But I thought Cardiff deserve a lot of credit. Di Young has done a great job there. They were bouncing. They've had a little bit of they've had a lot of disruption during Europe. We're getting guys from the Welsh Premiership to go play, getting Dan Fish out of retirement. And fairness to them, like, they got well beaten, but they played some great stuff away to Quins, at home to Quins, and played some good stuff at home to Toulouse as well. So they look to be in a good place, and having signed Fekitoa and Liam Williams, kind of seeing the crowd there, kind of, it's amazing. They got rid of the Blues from their name, so now a lot of the Cardiff RFC fans are back on board. Obviously Cardiff RFC have a huge history, identity. It's the capital city. It's basically Cardiff Arms is in the middle of Cardiff. So on a Friday night or a Saturday night, that place will be buzzing. So I think Wales or Cardiff are in a decent spot and going to get better. So there's no shame in losing to them. I think the big issue was what Cardiff. Look, it's one thing doing it against that team, but doing it against internationals is a lot harder. But they were very good at the defensive breakdown. Their kicking game was really accurate, and they found grass and found their teammates a lot. Kept trying little chips over the top, and put Leinster in a lot of pressure. And then at set piece time, Leinster didn't have a solid scrum. And I know I said it against the Head the other night, but I think Michael Fekitoa is a great signing, and he is more of a baller than Michael Bent. But Michael Bent was absolutely invaluable to Leinster for nights like last Friday night, going away to Cardiff or Edinburgh or Glasgow. You knew you had a rock solid scrum. And in fairness, Fekitoa will get there. Michael Bent at the start struggled a little bit. It's just becoming familiar with the different scrummaging styles in the URC. But yeah, it'll take him a little while to get there, and that's what really killed them. They weren't secure on their own ball. Cardiff were able to win a couple of key penalties, and I think that's just the nature of bringing in a tight head who has to adjust to that competition, even though he's a very good player.
Yeah, and in fairness, Birch, I think you said that even about Bent when he was departing. You know, it's not something you're only flagging now in retrospect. Murray, your thoughts on Leinster's performance? Like, I suppose going into an international break on the back of a defeat, in a way, might be ideal just to sort of galvanise people, and you kind of have the bit between your teeth, I'd imagine, if you're still involved with your province training away during those weeks and so on. But beyond, say, being insecure on their own ball, was there anything there that they'll feel as though they need to iron out? Or again, was it just, listen, Cardiff are the story here, good performance by them and good win?
Yeah, and absolutely they deserve huge credit for that. And it is a nice boost for Welsh Rugby to see that just before they go into it. I suppose there's a bit of a formula there now, isn't there? Like everyone who's beaten Leinster in the last 3 years, there's 8 times now they've kicked more than Leinster by a fair bit. And that's not just kicking the ball away. As Birch said, that's chips in behind. You sort of kick past try. You've got to have a big element of that to your game. The breakdown has been a huge theme in the games they've lost. They've been like heavily outscored in terms of breakdown turnovers in the 8 defeats they've had. Teams have been really good at not turning the ball over easily to Leinster in those defeats as well. And Leinster often thrive off that, as well as being ultra disciplined and not giving them that kind of access into the game. And as Birch mentions, the set piece as well. So there's little indicators there of where teams have been able to beat them. They'll also really rue, I think there was a period in the first half where they missed 3 or 4 visits into the 22 and they were way more wasteful than they usually are. And it would have been a big period of momentum in the game to put them into a good, strong winning position. And you tend to focus on that frenetic final passage, which clearly and literally was decisive. But that first half passage as well for me was massive in the game as well. So yeah, I don't think Leinster will be panicking, but it won't be sitting easily with them. It's been such a frustrating campaign. It almost feels like they haven't really got up and running. They've had the defeat at home to Ulster as well, which has sat so poorly with them. And the European games, as we mentioned at the time, they weren't contests and they didn't learn anything from it. So we're waiting for this kind of season to get up and running to Leinster's former standards. And that'll be one they're desperately eager to bounce back from.
We'll call it there, gents, for the time being, but we'll see you in a couple of hours. Bernard, thank you.
Thank you.
Murray, thank you.
Cheers, Gav. I don't think even the most diehard Munster fans could complain about too much. I'll sum up their game. Job done.
Yeah.
I actually, yeah, true enough. Jesus, it completely slipped my mind. So fair play.
That one would be forgotten by anyone. To be fairness, it wasn't the best game.
Birch has left the building, and that is all we've got time for. We'll be back later on, as I say. Squidge is joining us for Zoom preview of the Six Nations. The lads are going to do analysis set pieces. We're going to field all of the 42 members' questions, loads of those. Going to have a back and forth conversation. It's a normal Zoom call, and we're really, really looking forward to that. Just to let you know that the 42 GAA Weekly has returned, hurling and football shows with our new signing, Maurice Brosnan. We're delighted to have Maurice on board. He will be joined for the hurling by Anthony Nash and for the football by Mark O'Shea. So looking forward to getting stuck into that. Spring is here, I think we can safely say, and we're looking forward to Six Nations kickoff over the weekend. We will chat to you over the weekend if you remember, and next Thursday if not. Mind yourselves in the meantime. Enjoy it.